Is the pace of Cardano's development holding it back? I think there's two sides to each argument. As a part of today's video, I want to touch on the pros and the cons of the slow and steady approach. What's up, Beta Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. I want to dive into some of the recent conversations and potential arguments as to Cardano taking a slow and steady approach. Now, I'm here as a creator in this ecosystem. I definitely back the slow and steady approach. I think from a long-term sustainability standpoint that it makes a lot of sense. Now, I also want to go ahead and just take a look at the other side of the coin, touching on some of the potential issues, right? Or some of the potential drawbacks of taking this slow and steady approach. If you guys do enjoy content like this, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by, consider subscribing for more content like this, breaking down everything going on in Cardano. And last but not least, if you have any questions, then make sure to leave them down below. If you want to take things a step further and you want to support me, consider delegating with the official Dapp Central stake pool, which is stake pool ticker DAPP, where you'll be receiving your traditional ADA rewards. You'll also receive the Matera utility token as well as the Sarah utility token, given the fact that I am a single stake pool operator supporting their ongoing ISPOs. Moving right on in, again, there's a lot of people here that don't appreciate Cardano's approach. We've got a very great leader in Charles Hoskinson. If you guys have missed some of his recent conversations, he's been talking about why this is beneficial for the long term and why this is huge, right, for Cardano, just to be sustainable, to be self-governing, and to be run by the community in the future. So I want to kick things off by touching on some of the drawbacks. And the first thing when it comes to just this slow and steady approach that we've seen impacting Cardano in a negative way is the competition, right? So when somebody's brand new coming into the space, they look around to see which projects are moving the quickest. And of course, right now, that is in Cardano. So in terms of just the amount of developments that are coming out, in terms of the growth of the communities, and in terms of the adoption from mainstream or from TradFi, we do see other projects beating Cardano in that sense. Jumping into this quick graphic here, this was released by the Cornucopias team. They've recently expanded over into the base ecosystem, but in doing so, they highlighted something that has really not been my focus, right? Which is how quickly are other ecosystems growing. This does a really great job of identifying how quickly some of the newer networks have been able to grow to over 1 million contract addresses or 1 million wallets. So we've got Arbitrum taking 300 days, Optimism taking 191 days, and then more recently, ZK Sync taking 71 days, and then an astonishing 11 days for the base network. Now, this is arguably sort of plugged in because a lot of people already know and understand Coinbase, but this just goes to show that the newer networks are getting a lot more adoption, but it's not necessarily because they have better products than what's currently being developed here in Cardano. So with Base specifically, there's been a huge sort of rotation of liquidity and attention with respect to the meme coin space, where a lot of people were trading specifically in Solana, and they've now taken some of those assets or profits, and they're now moving into Base. So that's actually why they've been growing so much faster. But again, if we take a look at Cardano's approach, it's not to be the next meme chain, but it's to be the next chain to provide self-sovereignty, the ability to manage your own funds, the ability to be your own bank, and the ability to just have control of your own life. Now, the second thing with the slow and steady approach is just the market perception, right? So Cardano amongst its peers is sort of the unattractive option. And this can be somewhat of a hindrance for new people wanting to come into the space. Again, when people come into the space, they want to see what's moving the fastest, what's got the most hype, what's getting the most engagement. And while Cardano has been making strides, most recently partnering up with the Dubai Police Department for a pilot, we've also seen the partnership with Huawei and a lot more partnerships beginning to fire up. Cardano isn't always the first project to be mentioned, again, when it comes to being that sort of big attraction, right? Or that big shiny object. So I think this plays, again, to the downside of Cardano. But I think over the long term, the actual utility, right, will be from the platforms that are built on Cardano, the governance, the security, and the decentralization that it provides. Third, I want to talk about missed opportunities. If you've been keeping up in the space, you'll know that, every bull market, there's always a certain narrative. In 2017, that was ICOs, a lot of those taking place on Ethereum. Following that, in the latest bull run, that was NFTs, where everybody was buying a Bored Ape, a Moonbird, a CryptoPunk, whatever the case is. Now, with a lot of these trends, there is always liquidity that follows the trend. And so it's always good to make sure that you have the capabilities to allow for projects that are within that trend to grow on your ecosystem. So, for example, in the 2024 year, we've already seen meme coins pumping. Yes, Cardano's got meme coins, but it's not the overwhelming majority of projects here in the ecosystem. We've got a lot of reputable projects, for example, like Cornucopias. I mentioned them earlier. We've got Liquid, we've got Indigo, we've got MinSwap. We've got the Twin Protocol bringing RWAs into the ecosystem. We've got Noom, a lot of really big projects providing real utility, trying to bridge the gap and solve real world problems. Again, nothing wrong with meme coins, but I don't think that they're actually solving a problem. Some people might argue that they do bring on new users, but whether those users are the type of people that you want in the space long term is up to you to decide, right? I think that meme coins sort of promote a little bit of degeneracy, which of course is okay, but you don't want an entire ecosystem being built off of just that. That's not how you're going to get major adoption with major players like Huawei, like Google, like Microsoft. It's not by being promoted as a meme chain. It's being promoted as a much more serious chain. And it's actually funny because I take a very similar approach here on my channel, trying to provide a more professional approach to crypto and YouTube education. So if you do enjoy content like this, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up if it's your first time stopping by and you want more, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions, then make sure you leave them down below. The fourth point is just user frustration. So we've seen developers and of course some of the Cardano community members being frustrated with the pace of development, asking for things to be released a little bit more quickly or a little bit faster. And I understand that, but if you've been in tech, which I work in the Web2 industry in a tech related job, I understand that tech just takes a long time. You take even a look at Elon Musk taking over Twitter. There's still a ton of issues that Elon Musk and the entire Twitter team need to fix, even though you've got one of the wealthiest men in the world buying up that company. So it just goes to show that within technology as a whole, development is always slow. But then you add the additional layer of complexity, which is blockchain, which makes things even slower, right? This space changes so dramatically. I'm not sure if you guys have ever tried to jump out of the Cardano ecosystem and just try a new blockchain, but the fundamentals, the perspectives, the ideas, the implementations, they're all different. Yes, crypto, generally speaking, tends to be the same, but the way that each blockchain acts and behaves is very, very different. So again, I think it just adds an additional layer of complexity, but it does frustrate the developers, especially when they don't have adequate tooling and they don't have the resources that they need in order to feel comfortable building. Now, on a positive note, we do have more and more abstraction platforms coming out to simplify development here on the ecosystem, and I've covered those in prior videos as well. So do want to just, again, touch on both sides of the coin here. Now, the last thing when it comes to some of the potential drawbacks with the slow and steady approach, we have the agility, right? So you take a look at how agile Cardano is. We've had this roadmap, which has been laid out for a really long time now, and that hasn't changed. On one hand, that's very positive because it shows that the team has really thought about how they want to develop, and they've really put this roadmap together, thinking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ahead of every other network. Now, what this does as a drawback is it makes it very hard for us to pivot if there's ever a trend or a new direction that we want to go into. Again, it shouldn't always be just about the trends, but keep in mind that that does bring in new developers and that attracts new people who will eventually come into Cardano and then see the flourishing ecosystem that we have. So one of the things that I do think that, we need to be able to sort of do better moving forward is just be able to pivot on a dime. Now, it doesn't mean that you always want to chase the next shiny thing, but you at least want to be able to draw in people that may be serving or searching for a particular narrative. So that will do it there for some of the potential drawbacks. But of course, I am going to touch on some of the positives as well, which I want to quickly touch on here. So the biggest positive in my personal eyes is quality over quantity or quality over speed. Again, in this space, we've seen people saying, hey, Cardano needs to kiss the frog. and just ship their code out as quickly as possible. We've seen what's happened for other networks when they go ahead and do that. Of course, I get a lot of flack when I bring up Solana or Ethereum. These are networks that have taken the hurry up and market approach, and then we'll fix it later, as opposed to saying, hey, we're really going to think about this. We're going to take our time. It might frustrate users. We might not catch all the trends, but it'll pay off in 5 to 10 years. A really great example was ETH, or Ethereum's latest proof of stake update, right? That was huge. And there was just a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot of effort that went into that. Now, had they planned that a lot earlier, I think that that could have been handled. And that's exactly what Charles did, right? He realized, hey, we're not taking this quality over speed approach in Ethereum. Let me actually go ahead and develop my own blockchain, which of course is now Cardano. We've seen a few other networks do the same thing, one of them being Ergo. And I would actually say that they mimic, when I say they, I'm referring to Cardano and Ergo. They mimic each other very similarly in how they develop and how they approach pushing out new updates. So I want to quickly touch on that there. It's huge that we have a long-term mindset. It's no point in us being in Cardano if Cardano's not here in 5 years. Now, it's unfortunate, but a lot of these existing crypto protocols won't be here in 5 years. Take a look at some of the leaders in prior bull markets and where they are now, and it's night and day. Cardano has not had that fate, and I'm extremely hopeful that that will continue in the future, given the quality over quantity approach that it does currently take. Next is just the long-term vision. So Cardano was built with security in mind, scalability in mind, and longevity in mind. Right now, we are at the very end of the Cardano roadmap with the Chain hard fork and SIP number 1694 introducing governance, which is essentially the last boss. When we finally get our hands on governance, there is no single entity that can be pointed to, right, that's creating all the value on Cardano. It'll be a collective community effort. So from the standpoint of the SEC, it's going to be harder for us to be labeled as a security, given that there's not going to be one single entity, i.e. IOG, i.e. the Cardano Foundation, or even Emergo, that can be pointed at to say, hey, you guys are the ones providing all this value. Therefore, this can be considered as a security. So it's a huge piece there. Again, shout out to Charles and the entire team for just thinking about the development of Cardano and having this longer term mindset to be here in the long run, in that the actual utility that we receive, or the actual value that we receive, will be derived directly from the utility that we provide. Again, taking a much more professional approach into onboarding people into the ecosystem. Next, in terms of some of the benefits when it comes to Cardano's slow and steady approach, is the avoiding of mistakes. I released a video not too long ago highlighting the fact that Cardano's late mover advantage is actually a net positive. And again, we're able to learn from the blockchains that have come before us. So you take a look at Bitcoin, right, which is a generation 1 network. You take a look at Ethereum, which is generation 2. You take a look at Cardano, which is generation 3. Cardano's been able to pick up the slack, identify some of the holes that Ethereum has had, that Bitcoin has had, and it's been able to iterate and improve on those different aspects. Now, it's not to say that Cardano will be the best blockchain ever. Of course, as newer generations come online, they will give Cardano a run for its money if they take the slow and steady approach without trying to cut corners, like we've seen time and time again. So we're able to learn from other networks, other protocols that have had issues, that have rushed to market initially, in order to make sure that we avoid the same potholes that they may have fallen into. One clear example here is Cardano's liquid staking feature, or liquid staking approach, which is definitely one of the best in the industry. It always gets ignored, but it's something that other networks are beginning to shift over to, as I mentioned with Ethereum recently making that proof of stake network upgrade. Next, we have community involvement. So the fact that Cardano is taking this slow and steady approach allows for the community to much more thoroughly chime in when things are working well, or when things aren't going as expected. Take a look, for example, at the Vassal hard fork. There were community members that had some concerns about things being launched on the testnet. They were able to voice that. The general community was able to confirm some of the worries or concerns that were raised by some really key contributing members. And that actually prompted IOG to take a step back, rework things and make sure that everything was right on the test net before moving over to mainnet. Now, there were some potential bugs that could have been very costly to Cardano, but given the fact that IOG was very open to hearing out the community, we're able to avoid some of those things. Now, in addition to that, I mentioned governance just a couple of seconds ago. With governance, we have workshops taking place around the world. We've got some of the brightest minds in the ecosystem contributing to governance, right? Again, really sitting down, ironing out some of the pros and cons, and trying to make this as user-friendly and as adoptable for DREPs, stake pool operators, and Cardano token holders. So it's really good to see that governance is being developed in tandem with IOG, the Cardano Foundation, and Emergo. And it's not something that's just being dropped on us as a community and being told that we should just accept it for what it is without actually providing our input and our feedback. The last thing I want to highlight here is just the future potential. So given the quality over speed, the long-term vision, the ability to avoid mistakes in the community involvement, this essentially sets Cardano up to be here as a player in the long run. Cardano is one of the few networks that has had multiple bull runs, which continues to remain in the top 10. Now, will we see others that are taking a slower or more shortcut-based approach remaining in the top 10? Of course, but it also just goes again to the initial fundamentals. Blockchain was developed to get away from the traditional issues that we had around 2008 with the financial crisis and just some of the oversight that these big banks and big governments have over us, the average day person. So when we take a look at that, when you're in a blockchain ecosystem, is that what's actually driving them in terms of development? I can definitely say that is a yes here in Cardano, but I can't say that that's always a yes for other ecosystems, especially when they're just solely after liquidity, solely after price go up. Again, I think it's completely okay for us here to be looking for financial peace or financial freedom in this space. Of course, Cardano will appreciate, but that'll be a result of the value that we provide, not necessarily any inflation of the tokens or any sort of flash or flashy tactics being used in order to just drive people in the ecosystem and use them to extract liquidity. So hopefully you guys found this video to be a little bit helpful. Again, a little bit different than normal, but a much more candid conversation, breaking down some of the negative arguments when it comes to Cardano's slow and steady approach, but also highlighting the good, which are some of the benefits, right? And some of the sustainability and longevity features or accolades that we will have into the future. So I'm expecting for Cardano to continue doing great things. Yes, sometimes things get delayed. It's not just on Cardano, it's on every blockchain. It's with anything dealing with tech. And I think that as the ecosystem matures and as we get more stability, right? And as we begin to see some of these competitors sort of fall into the wayside, the vision in the way that Cardano was deployed or built will really begin to start making more sense. So let me know if you agree with today's video down below. I would really appreciate it if you learn anything along the way. If you could just smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by and you want more content like this, breaking down everything in Cardano, consider subscribing. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me, then make sure you leave them down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.